Glenn Close wants to remake Fatal Attraction from female perspective. Oscar nominee Glenn Close wants to revisit her classic movie with a remake told from the female perspective. Released in 1987, the original, itself a remake of an earlier short film, starred Close as a woman who stalks her married lover Michael Douglas after he breaks off their affair. The film's most remembered scene, in which Close menaces Douglas' family by boiling their pet rabbit in a pot, became the 1987 equivalent of a meme. Thanks in large part to Close's truly terrifying performance, would go on to gross a whopping $156 million at the domestic box office, $358 million if adjusted for inflation. Close herself would score an Oscar nomination for Best Actress, ultimately losing to Cher for Moonstruck. The movie also touched off a trend of mainstream thrillers loaded up with sex, leading directly to later hits like Basic Instinct and Indecent Proposal. Speaking to Deadline, Close explained that she thinks the time has come for a remake of the thriller that looks at things from the perspective of her character Alex Forrest. Now, Close wants to revisit, but with one key change to the original story. She explained, "We've gone back to Paramount to find out, because they own the title." In fact, Close has gone so far as to touch base with Paramount about the idea. "I think they've had some things in the works, but I do think it would be interesting to take the exact story basically and do it from her point of view. I think she'd become a tragic figure rather than perceived as an evil figure." Indeed, in the original movie, Alex comes across as a deeply disturbed individual who turns into almost a horror movie slasher, while the audience is made to feel sympathy for Douglas' character even though he is clearly a womanizer. Feminists have often pointed to as an example of the crazy woman trope, and Close herself acknowledges that the film plays into clichés about disturbed women and feeds into the stigma around mental illness. But Close thinks a remake that sees things from Alex's point of view would be interesting and very upsetting. No doubt, a remake of For the Me Too era would be a fascinating proposition, and one that would be sure to engender a lot of discussion. The remake perhaps could in some way redeem the original movie by looking at Alex's situation in a more sympathetic way, and in light of the sad realities of mental illness, rather than simply playing out the situation as basically a sophisticated slasher movie. It seems that Close, who became a star thanks to her performance as Alex Forrest, feels a strong sense of personal responsibility about that movie and would like to go back to the story and find a way of telling it without reducing Alex to a mere crazed bunny-killing villain. Source: Deadline.